go to this. Now we are moving on to enhancing cognitive abilities with comprehensive training, a large online randomized active controlled trial. So, Mahesh, I'll let you present the paper and then we can, oh, you've plugged in, I didn't think I turned it off, but it may have turned itself off. It did. Okay.
Is it one of those that has a minute cooldown before it actually turns it off or something? No, 3.
Yeah. Maybe the battery's just, it may have also told you, oh, something happened. Starting up. So this is done, is a paper that is from the Lumosity group and kind of is associated with Lumosity. Lumosity also has the Human Cognition Project. If you look at the Lumosity site, if you're a researcher, you can get access, if you can justify why you need it, to the stored results that they have, right? Which in theory are like a massively useful resource for analysing how people in general perform on the Lumosity style cognitive tests. So, so yeah, it is. Although I gave you the court case and showing Lumosity was over-claiming, that doesn't mean that they have no benefit. It's just that how they were selling themselves in the US was potentially more than they could prove. Though proving that you're helping people is quite a high bar, right? So that is a real challenge. So yeah, I'll hand over to Ash and you can discuss the paper.
Okay, it's a quite long topic.
Yep.
But when I read the first paper topic, it says like the enhancing cognitive. That was quite obvious, like clear. But the second part, large online randomized active control trial, it kind of got lost somewhere in there.
It is a bit jargony,
Yeah.
right? And actually all of those bits mean something.
Just got few words from each things they did, kind of, and just made a sentence out of it. And I just want to go with the paper first. They wanted to test as obvious, it is a paper funded by Lumosity, so they wanted to compare Lumosity with the crossword puzzle, and there's a thought that since the crossword puzzle, as many says, is beneficial for cognitive and mental skills, they try to compare it with crossword puzzles, and Lumosity is the treatment group and the crossword puzzle is a control group, so that they can compare with the Lumosity. And for this they got every participant from Lumosity upside, so they don't kind of a biased group maybe. And they only got the participants who didn't have a subscription with the Lumosity. Maybe they wanted to limit the daily use of the Lumosity. If you are a premium user, you can of course try everything. So, and during the process they lost half of their participants, and they had to remove few because they access Lumosity as well, like from the crossword puzzle group, because they tried Lumosity during the period of training, but I can't be sure others didn't try. And since it's online, they assume that it's a non-contact group, like they are individual, but it is an online test, so I don't know how they can assume that. And here it is. And the crossword puzzle was adjusted to the difficulty of a New York Times paper, for like equivalent to Thursday paper, because that's more like medium difficulty. It starts on Sunday and the hardest is on Saturday. And the Lumosity, of course, it changes its difficulty automatically. And they had like a pre and post questionnaires, and also the training was 10 weeks, a long test, and 15 minutes each. But for crossword puzzle, they gave one crossword, and if they could finish it within 15 minutes, they would provide with another crossword. But they can, the second crossword is basically just for fun, maybe, because that didn't have any time. They can finish it anytime they like. And for Lumosity, it's just they had to finish 49 exercises during the training, and they tried to test it with basically the crossword puzzle is a non-cognitive skill. They said it's for non-cognitive, and the Lumosity is for cognitive. And the training questions were from 7 different categories: neuropsychological assessment battery, and the forward reverse memory is just you have to remember what comes next and what you chose before, something like that. And grammatical reasoning is with the words and grammatical correctness in the sentence. And progressive matrix, it just says some matrix reasoning assessment. And go no go arithmetic and to target where to correctly find the solution in shorter time. And they did a lot of analysis as well during the period, so that how they are feeling with the test, like if they are feeling good or bad, like what is the scale of their emotions during that period. And they had 9 emotional questions, and the questions had answers like agree, disagree, strongly agree, something like that, or never, every day, like during time, something like that. And they also provided us with the questions in the table they assessed. And obviously they got the result that Lumosity is better, twice much better actually. And also like they compared it with the pretest. So like in the previous papers we read, that the pretest, when they tested pretest, there could be chance that they actually faked it, so that they can have higher difference when they had a post test. And obviously with the crossword puzzles, they work with a lot of words. They had a higher result in grammatical reasoning, and everything else was a bit lower than Lumosity. And they also tested with the outliers effect, engagement effect, like they had some outlier result. They tried the primary and secondary tests to check if the outliers effect or not, and their result could not account for the difference. And also for engagement effect, they found that the Lumosity requires more times for your proper efficiency than crossword. And this is the result. They said like twice as much as crossword puzzle for cognitive training. That's Lumosity. And for individual of those 7 assessments, only the grammatical, of course, was higher. And this is something I already said. The analysis they did during and after. They also did analysis after the test training, so that they can find some results about their test, how was it, or something like that. And both groups showed improvement, but more with the Lumosity. And for discussion part, they mentioned that they have higher improvement in like crossword and also in Lumosity training, but they could not explain why they have like some of the group people in the control group showed cognitive improvement, which should not have, as they assumed, and they could not explain why there was such improvement. And they said just further study is required for that case, and they actually wanted to test if the Lumosity test will improve better than crossword puzzle, which they did, but they also had some outlier results, something like that they could not explain, so they were kind of okay with what they got, and just explained that we couldn't explain why this result was unknown. We need more time to test, and but then again they had 10 weeks of period to test training. And more about the paper, they have like regarding the contribution of the paper, it shows positive effect, but they could not explain a lot of things for the things that happened, like the improvement in the cognitive of crossword puzzles. And the paper was quite structured so that we can have all the abstract and description in the beginning. So it was like the abstract was background methods and everything structured, so you don't have to read all the paper to get the idea of the paper. And they have conclusion in the abstract, but they don't have anything conclusive in the discussion section. They just discuss the outcome of the test. And basically this was their conclusion from the result, that they just got increase in cognitive abilities with the control group as well. And about the repeatability, I'm not sure if we can repeat the process, because they only involve the participant from Lumosity's website and not other people, and it kind of felt like not really advertisement, but they kind of tried to influence the people who were not subscribers for the Lumosity. And for pre-test and post questionnaires, they said that they have a few situations. They said that we have to reverse the situation of certain questions, so that there is always from lower to higher rank. And maybe I don't think they have all the questions in the appendix as well, but they have a lot of information provided, so we can look at them and find other results. And they said they tried off-the-shelf version of Lumosity. So, and of course this is funded by Lumosity, so they can get all the information, but I'm not sure everyone can get such information. And the main important question is the paper biased, since it's funded by Lumosity. But to say like they did a good research and experiment with their paper, so it's really difficult to say. It's not biased, but since we are looking only at the criticism, so it could be biased, but they did a good research on that one. And like I already said, that not only there may be more than 330 people who did cognitive training during that period, and they got fairly enough number of people.
It would be surprising if you guys got that many from the research that you did.
Just get to create the service with lots of users.
Yes, yes. So if you were doing something with Kahoot, for example, it would have lots of users, but again, that's a commercial entity, so it's really hard to get to influence what they do. But
like they had, like, in the beginning they had and they said that some of the researchers argue that cognitive training like the games improve cognitive skills, and there are some papers that doesn't say that nullifies the assumption, and they try to prove that the cognitive training improves the cognitive skill, and they kind of were able to do so. And I've been playing this Lumosity for 6 days now, and it's really boring. Like the tutorials are really annoying, but you don't know what the game is about, so you have to go through the tutorial, and it's really annoying. And they have a good explanation with the results, with the graphs, and they just provide a lot of numbers in the discussion and results, but they have a good graph that you don't have to read all the bunch of numbers. You can just look at the paper graph and get the idea from it. And also about the pre and post questionnaires, since they are testing against Lumosity, like against crossword puzzles, like for Lumosity, like there could be chance that the pre-test and post questionnaires could be like slightly modified in favor of Lumosity. There could be chance.
The challenges with picking pre and post tests, right? So a pre-test you wouldn't probably pick would be, you know, number of press ups, right? Because you wouldn't expect number of press ups to be changed by playing Lumosity, right? So you'd expect that one to have no effect. So basically, the things you're going to test, you probably would assume would be things that could be influenced by the activity you're doing. Given that you are selecting from a range of potential tests, your selection could be biased in what you select. So yes, so there's even if what they're doing is picking normal activity, like picking normal activities that you could cognitively test, because there are so many cognitive tests. The ones you pick emphasize particular skills. So, the mocker test. I don't know if we've got you guys to do the mocker. You've probably seen the mocker recently. It was the one that Donald Trump was given to do, which has a bunch of simple tests to see if you have dementia. Basically, anybody who's normally functioning should be around 28 to 30. Just basically should be 30, but occasionally you'll make a mistake just because. Yeah, so it is supposed to only become sensitive once you're starting to really struggle, right? So for example, can you draw a clock face? Can you make the hands point at 10 past 5? That kind of thing, right? Or can you draw a clock face and can you put the numbers on it? So if you can't do that, then you have cognitive impairment, right? So it's testing right at a very specific level of impairment. And so, yeah, what you pick from all of these tests certainly does influence what you'll find.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like in the discussion, they say that the crossword puzzle is not really suitable for this comparison, but they did it anyway. Like,
yeah,
they found that the comparison was not fair, maybe because you can also see like the kind of grammatical reasoning is in Lumosity, but the only thing in the crossword puzzle is words, nothing else. So
I don't get the math by reading the dictionary.
No. Yeah, I would be very surprised if that was a transferable skill of reading dictionary to becoming better at maths.
Well, algebra is letters, so...
Yes, so better at letters.
Yeah, they only, like, from the result, they only found that the improvement was grammatical reasoning, and everything else was nothing.
Yeah, but, you know, I might have been able to predict.
Like, but they found the cognitive improvement in those group as well, but it could be only natural they got improved.
there could be a I think it's Hawthorne Effect in here of the fact that these people were being measured, the fact that you know somebody has told you, right, we're going to weigh you,
Yeah.
and then we're going to weigh you every week, and then we're going to weigh you after 10 weeks, like, and you want to, you know, and we're going to try and put you on this diet, and we're going to put you on this kind of diet, right? The fact that somebody's measuring you every week means that you're going to change your behavior, right? And so it could be that just merely wanting to be better cognitively and entering into the study to want to improve, being measured and having feedback may be enough to get you better, right? So there could be that side effect of the being measured and the desire to be measured is what makes you cognitively better. So yeah, it's really hard to tease out a particular influence. But yep, so could it be biased? Certainly. I found, I must say, with the graphs, you mentioned they were good graphs, and they were not pretty graphs, but the one with the assumption of linear improvement, which is figure 4, which kind of does a linear fit to the data. And they do say something about we could not assume the linear performance continued.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm kind of thinking, well, why on earth would you have thought linear would be even a good fit, right? It's kind of, I can't think of any cognitive activity that I would think would be linear over 60 days, right? That to me doesn't make sense that you'd have linear improvement. I would expect more improvement early and then less improvement late, just because that's how our brains kind of are, right?
Does that also mean that once you fully understand the subject, you start inventing new parts of that subject because it always has to go linearly?
I can't understand how they could have you're adjusting your grand index score, right? Given their grand index score will also have lower thresholds of performance, right? Because some of them are measured on speed, and it has a reaction time 0 based on it, so you can't improve beyond a certain point, right? So your improvements are always going to be non-linear. So yeah, anytime you guys put a linear on a graph and say, oh look, this looks linear, yeah, be careful, right? Because that certainly does the things like, I think if you put height, if you match linear to a height, you could show that people in the 12th century were -5 centimeters tall. Because if you look for the last 100 years, the height increases. If you propagate that backwards, they were negative height, and it's going, no, that's probably not true.
Isn't that also in the figure 3, where they're doing because I had trouble understanding the figure 3. Does it take the post-test score and subtract the pre-test score? I'm guessing that's what they're doing, seeing as it's not easy to see.
Yes.
But on the first one, the forward memory span, the error margin there is below 0, so there's a possibility that you actually got negative.
Yes, you got worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the margin error says that it's entirely possible this made it worse. Yeah.
And also quite much worse.
And potentially quite a lot worse. Yes. You'll find this, when basically with drug trials, right? So there'll be a measure of effectiveness, and sometimes that will also have that this drug could actually just be making the whole sickness worse, right? And so often that is within the margin error, is that this drug isn't actually helping at all. Okay. Okay, right. So thank you for presenting. So critique, Anastasia. Yep.
Firstly, the previous papers, the participants were also okay. If we are talking about 2 games, but we are talking about 2 kinds of groups, about treatment and control groups. And previously, it was supposed that we have
Okay, so if you look at the title of the paper, right? So the reason why like the end bit of it is basically just jargon is because it's referring to a specific type of psychological testing, so or medical testing. So an active control group means that you use a control group that is doing something, right? So the crossword group is the control group for the experimental group, which is the Lumosity group. The reason they do this is because, for example, with the previous series game that we looked at, which was Sparks, so which was an antidepressant game, right? Or a game around teenage depression. When they measured against a control group which was waiting list, right? So if you're left on the waiting list, your depression doesn't get any better, right? In fact, if you're told, oh, we don't have a spot for you 6 months, go away, come back in 6 months, a teenager won't get better, it seems, by themselves because they've just been thrown on the waiting list, right? And whereas if you give them a game and measure them every week, then it could be the measuring that's having the effect rather than the game that's having the effect, right? That you've taken them off the waiting list and you're doing something, right? Because that would be a passive control group, which is the putting on waiting list, and an active group, which is testing. So to get an active control group, you'd have to get those people to say, okay, how does our game compare to going bowling? So you need those people to be actively measured every week and do a social activity every week and be actively trying to do something. That wasn't the thing you were testing. To compare, is it the fact you're active that makes the difference, rather than the type of activity, right? So what they're doing here is they're saying the type of activity, Lumosity as a type of activity is better than crosswords as a type of activity. So that's why it's an active control group.
Is it also just because there's like it's not hard to beat 0? Like it's not hard to show that you have some effect when there's like
comparing to a passive control group.
Yeah, like if you're looking at cancer treatments, it's like doing nothing, or getting this experimental treatment. Like doing well, sure you can make it worse, but other than that, every other time it's going to get better.
Yeah. So in cancer research, for example, they talk about the gold standard, right? So they talk about the current treatment as being the gold standard, and so you're not supposed to compare against doing nothing, because actually that's also unethical in cancer treatment. Though you will find in the 1960s and 70s there was some very dubious research in the US where they gave sugar pills to some black cancer patients because they wanted to see that their treatment was better than placebo. And so they gave people placebo chemotherapy rather than actual chemotherapy, telling them it was chemotherapy to see if that would help. And they all died because they received no actual treatment. This is that's no longer considered ethical to do that to a group of people who are supposed to receive medical treatment. And in fact, often you'll find now with medical treatment there is an out clause that if you see a large enough effect during the trial period, you are required to stop the trial and move to the new drug. Right? So they have this kind of, if we're suddenly seeing massive effect, we can't ethically keep this trial running and let those people die knowing that there is a treatment that would save them. Right? So there's an out clause once the effect is large enough that you're supposed to stop the trial and move into treatment. Right? So that is, but beating nothing is usually pretty easy. And certainly with depression, ignoring somebody is usually easy to do, just by paying attention to them. But, okay, so yeah, other criticisms? Thoughts?
I think the paper they did was as an advertisement that Lumosity is better.
I think this is more clearly, so last week we had a paper for maths where it was kind of advertising without trying to pretend not to be. Here, they're quite clearly, who are funding us and kind of, so at least you know what the background is, right? You know the potential bias. Is it does this defeat the potential bias and show enough clear results? I'm not sure that it does. I think their grand index choice and the way in which they sum things up and the way in which they combine things and the tests that they choose could all have could all be biased, and I don't think they've quite done enough to convince me that they're not biased. Talia?
Well, I think you talked about it as well before the class, but I found it interesting that more than 50% disappeared before the post test.
Yes. So this also comes to, like, part of the reason to use games, right, is not that we just think, you know, everything with a game is better than everything without a game, right? Usually what games are good at is motivation. Now, in both of these studies, the people who are being paid $100 to spend 10 hours, right, could it be that motivation was partly from being paid to do something? So are you really testing whether the game is motivating? And surely with this, the fact that half of the people dropped out, if motivation is what games do well, and your game can't motivate people to stay,
and you can't motivate them with a 6-month free trial.
and you can't motivate them with a 6-month free trial because, you know, they've tried it and gone, oh, this is pretty good, I don't want 6 months of this, even if it was free. Surely you're missing out on testing something that is core to what games are supposed to be good at, which is motivating people to keep going, right? So it does seem a bit odd, and it certainly is one of the big challenges of doing this kind of science and saying, well, we're only going to look at the people who were motivated by what we were doing, right? It's a bit like, and this gets done quite a bit, if we go to third-year computer science students and we go to the female students and say to them, how do we get more women to do computer science? And the third-year female computer science students are saying, nothing, because I really like this. I'm not like, you know, they've already bought in and they've already got through all of the hurdles that would have knocked them out. So they probably don't actually know why it's so terrible, right? So, Anastasia, if we ask you, what do we do to get more women to do computer science, seeing you're a woman doing computer science, it's kind of, well, yeah, you're probably the wrong person to ask, because you're already here, right? You've already got through those stages. And so you might be already engaged with the way we do this, right? And so again, here, the people who benefit from Lumosity, if half of the people are dropping out, maybe those are all the people who don't benefit from Lumosity and find it annoying and aren't motivated. And so you're just culling it down to the people who like it. And then you go and ask Anastasia, how do we get more women to do computer science? And she tells us what she enjoys about computer science, and so we do more of that. Is that likely to mean we get more women, or do we get more Anastasias?
Is it bad to have more Anastasias?
I think it'd be great to have more Anastasias, right? But just asking someone who's already passed through all of the filters isn't necessarily the best person to try and broaden your target audience. Right? So not to put in bread, hopefully you understand what I mean, Anastasia. But you know, if motivation is one of the key things, neither of these really talk about games as motivators to do an activity. And surely, if you were trying to lose weight, right, and you're looking at a food, and you had one food that everybody hated and nobody wanted to drink, and you paid people $10 a day to drink it, and you did that for 10 weeks, and you say, well, you know, this horse urine and avocado drink is great for losing weight, we should just give that to people. And if nobody wants to drink it, it's not gonna help, right? So it's unless you are engaging people in something they'll keep doing, even if it was beneficial, it might not be useful, right? So long term, like if we say, oh, Portal 2 is great for cognitive improvement, and the thing is, well, you know, but I probably only play it for 8 to 20 hours, right? Once I've played through it and I've got used to it and I'm kind of done with it, do I keep playing it every month
Also,
for the next 10 years?
repeating it probably doesn't scale linearly either.
No, and doing it a second time doesn't make you that much better. It's kind of, you know, it might be a one-shot deal, right? You get that one time better, and then you're kind of done with getting improvements out of that thing, right? You've kind of sucked it dry, and there's nothing left. So neither of these papers really point to what we want, which was the linear. That linear line is what we'd like, but, you know, I don't think it's linear.
Well, it can't go linear forever, but I mean, if you're suffering from dementia or something, it might go linear from day to day.
So what you'd like if you've got dementia is it for at least to stop going down. you want to continue, you want it to be straight, but just straight horizontal.
Like if you've forgotten the entire game, then you know you have to relearn everything, and then you get massive learning benefits each day.
Each day. Well, so interestingly, there is well, not the dementia, but for amnesics, right? So if you've got amnesia and you can't remember what you do day to day, they showed with Tetris, if you play it, the next day you have amnesia, so you can't remember that you played it, but you're better at it.
That's a cool experience after you've gone through like a year of just doing that, and suddenly like, I played this for the first time and I'm a fucking god.
How am I so good at this? Yeah, they have no idea. And actually it's also interesting because after a few days of playing it, they'll also be dreaming about Tetris. And so when you wake them up, they can describe dreaming about blocks and have no idea why. So it's completely like, I don't know why. I'm like, this is a weird dream. But yeah, so these are young amnesics. But yeah, so you can, so they just do, like, learning isn't required, like, you don't need to be consciously remember what happened to you for it to affect your performance, right? But yeah, so dementia is somewhere in that amnesic spectrum. Okay, so and for cognitive training, one of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about, and what I brought up with weight and height. So, a couple of things that you may have heard of. So, working memory. You've heard of 5 plus or minus 2? You heard of that idea? Some of you have. The concept is that our brains generally only have a certain amount of things we can hold in our head and work with, and they're groups of things, and so you can only, so if you're trying to remember numbers, for example, right, so if you want to remember a 7-digit number, you can kind of hold 7 digits in your head, right? However, one of the techniques you use is to turn them into pairs of digits, right? Because although you can only hold 7 individual things in your head, those individual things could be paired numbers. So you might be able to retain 10 numbers or even 14 numbers if you put them into 57 rather than in number 5 and the number 7. Right? So you bind them together and make them an object. Right? Now there are other techniques that use that try and turn numbers into words. Right? So there's a bunch of memory techniques where you take a number, you turn those numbers into words, and then you remember 3 or 4 digit numbers as being a particular word, and then you just remember the sequence of words, and you can remember much longer sequences of numbers. Right? So this is a technique people use. It just requires some effort to code it, like encode and decode numbers, but there are ways that people have worked out how to do this quickly. Now, if we believe that some things are static, like working memory, and some things are dynamic, like knowledge. Right? So how much you know about, presidents of the USA or Norwegian state law systems, or in London the taxi drivers, which have the knowledge, which is the map of London in their head, and you see their hippocampus grows so that they can deal with having all the spatial knowledge that they're having to process. Is intelligence, so I'll get an opinion here, is intelligence static, or do you get more intelligent or merely more knowledgeable as you go through university? Do you get more intelligent, or do you just get more knowledgeable?
More knowledge, I would say.
More intelligent. Depends. But all those measurements are shit. So
all the metrics are a problem, right? So one approach is that IQ is supposed to be static, right? You're supposed to have like 120 IQ and then stay at 120 IQ all the way through your life, because you're supposed to be progressing at the normal average, and so although you're getting smarter, because it's age linked, you're not actually getting better. And they try and actually measure some things with, you know, trying to say this skill doesn't change over time, right? So it's static and so it's not trainable. So one of the questions is, what do you think is trainable about intelligence and what isn't trainable? Or do you think everything is trainable?
the tests are trainable as well.
Yes.
So the tests are trainable, yes, it's certainly the tests are trainable, and it's one of our big problems is that you can train on the tests.
Also, the tests sort of decide everything. So I took some tests from at work over 2 summers, which they give to all the students. And the first time I did one of them, I did it so horribly that they sort of didn't believe me, because we did 5 tests, and the 5th one I did so horrible compared to the others that they're like, like the recruiters were coming up with reasons as to why I didn't do that test properly.
Right.
And then the next year they had changed that test to something that apparently measured the same thing, but it was a completely different test, and that one I aced. And it's like, okay, so there's some effect there, because I don't know if I'm good at that thing or it's just a test that.
It's so much smarter of the year.
Yeah. Like I went from like below average to below average.
So we write tests, right? And so when you guys are doing serious games, you will have to work out tests to test whether your game has had an effect, right? So with cognitive tests, if you're testing something which doesn't change, like this way I use the height analogy. So you can imagine 3 things: height, weight, and strength, right? So height, it shouldn't matter how much you do stuff, you shouldn't change your base height, right? That, like, we can certainly make you shorter by like cutting your legs off, right? So if you like poke your brain and take bits out, I can make you thicker, right? I don't know if I can make you taller currently, right? It's easy to make you shorter, hard to extend your bones, right? Weight, we can change your diet, we can change what you do, we can change your diet for a set length of time to lose weight and then put you back on a stable diet. But to go from this weight down to this weight, we need to do something to decrease your energy intake and increase your energy output to get you down to here. But once you're here, we can then change to a maintenance diet which matches the two, right? For strength training, if I make you lift weights, it's not that I make you lift weights and suddenly you get these massive muscles and now I can go back to what you were doing before you gained all those muscles, because your muscles will just go back to the way they were, right? It's because they respond to current activities rather than are a permanent change. Right? So what bits of the brain are which? What bits respond permanently to change? What bits respond to a change for a while and then, you know, that's okay, once you got there you can just do a subsistent thing, and which are just completely responding to their environment. So, you know, when you say you got rusty at something, right? So you're programming, you program for a while, and then you don't program for a long time, you go back to programming. How much of your brain has changed versus how much is that just responding to current environments?
How does that? I guess that's a mix, because like you always remember how to like ride a bicycle after you've done it, or after you learned it.
Muscle memory.
Yeah.
Muscle memory, yes, yeah.
You can also get bad at muscle memory, because I've played a lot of guitar, and a lot of my favorite songs, and they were in muscle memory because I like played them continuously for 5 years. I can't play them anymore.
So like one of the big challenges we have, and so going specifically to a cognitive thing, which was in ADHD, one of the symptoms is that they have low working memory, right? So you actually can measure ADHD kids, and kids who have a strong diagnosis of ADHD, they have a smaller working memory than children who are neurotypical. So one of the games that they looked at doing is can we train your working memory to get people who have ADHD to have the working memory of someone who is more normal, right? So maybe if we train your working memory, that'll help you remember things so you don't get distracted so easily, because you can hold multiple things in your head without like losing the context, right? And that comes down to a question of, is working memory trainable? If it's not trainable, it doesn't matter how awesome the games we make are, right? It doesn't matter how motivating they are, it doesn't matter how fantastically engaging and targeted they are. If you can't train it, it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to get better, right? So when we do games for cognition, working out, can you improve the thing that you claim to be improving? Is it possible to do it all? And even if it is possible to improve it, is that improvement a long-lasting improvement, or is it only improved while you're doing the activity? Right? So is this a drug that fixes you, or is it a drug you'd have to keep taking? Right? So these are open questions. The intent of Lumosity is that you'd be able to keep doing it forever, right? And so maybe you could maintain ability. If it was like a muscle, you could keep doing it and you didn't pain. Portal, we wouldn't expect you to be able to keep doing it forever. Crosswords, people do keep doing them for long periods of time. So that is quite different to something like Portal, which you wouldn't expect somebody to play every Monday for 10 years. Right? It would be very unusual to find someone doing that. Right? So yep, next week, seeing we've used up our time, any thoughts, questions? So do you think at university, you guys all go to university, are we making you guys smarter? Or just more knowledgeable?
Sometimes neither of them.
So some courses make you more stupid. So it could be both, right?
That does depends on the subject. Like, if it's a problem-solving subject, then you probably don't get necessarily more knowledgeable if it's just the problem-solving, obviously. But if it's like just facts courses, I would say that doesn't make you necessarily more intelligent. That makes you more knowledgeable.
And so when you test people's IQ, and when you test people, one of the challenges I have at university is our exams are terrible, right? Our exams are not highly correlated with your future ability. So doing well in an exam is not really a good measure of whether you're going to be an awesome employee, right? So that's a mismatch. And one of the questions is, like, when you go to university, are we just making you guys more knowledgeable? Is that all it actually ends up being? Or are there skills, and are we changing the way your brain works? And how much can we change the way your brain works?
It's not always a thing how much you know, it's also a thing how you can implement these knowledges. Because you may know the thing, but practically you can't know how to do it. So, and practically the university doesn't give you so much knowledges, it just shows you how to implement this, and all knowledges you can find in the internet, but you just need someone to show you how to implement it.
So because knowledge is available basically through the internet, you're saying that the university provide more than just access to knowledge, that we also provide this a structured approach to applying knowledge.
I mean, the knowledge itself you could get in the library. Yeah. It's just that now you have someone like mentor you across the way and show you the path that you can take.
Yes, and I mean they should be more knowledgeable about how you should learn it, get new knowledge. Because when you just sit all alone and you don't know where to start, so, or someone does, but or some people do and know where to start. But I certainly don't. So
right. Yeah. So and hopefully. So we're moving through these papers, so hopefully you can see some of the good bits, and so these papers do have a bunch of nice things that are better, right? So than last week's papers, there's more explanation of like which users they had more users, they told you how they incentivized the users, they gave you more data and more numbers, even though the numbers, I think, yeah, you're right, like, entirely, they were better. They're still not perfect, right? And they're still a long way from perfect. But I think that's partly what we need to do at university, is be critical of things, right? So that's why we've been doing this. Okay, so next week, we need to get out of here because the next people are trying to come in. So next week we have, and I need to go back to the science. Yes. So it's you. Right. Yeah. So I'll send that out this afternoon. I think the folded paper is pretty good, and so iWire and folded are both good games for science. Yeah, so we can go with those. Okay.
That was already out.
Yeah, that was on the info sheet thing, but I'll send it out. I'll send an update with the links. Okay. Thank you, Mahesh. Am I saying your name right?
Yep.
Okay.